Testing.
Okay, everybody ready? Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Virginia City Council Chambers. This is a regularly scheduled council committee of the whole meeting. Call this meeting to order. Today's date is Tuesday, June 6, 2023. The time is 9 a.m. We have a really full agenda today, and so please be patient as we call your name forward and the items that we discussed today. We will be deviating from the current schedule to accommodate some of our city staff. So we have a full council present here today. We'll turn the agenda over to our city administrator, Britt Seabenis. Britt?
Thank you. The first item on the agenda is John McNamara from Wold Architects, and we also have Pat Wirtz from Carl Sanderson here to talk about our Virginia Public Safety Center project.
Good morning, Mr. McNamara.
So we are at that point where we're ready to go. You've heard some various presentations over the last couple of months, so I came bearing gifts today for those that want to spend some time looking at the final bid documents. I have a whole set for you to take a look at, but certainly there certainly will be a few things that we'll continue to tweak with work scopes and that type of stuff with our friends at Cross Anderson, but we are at that point where it's just down to the fine little details here and there. There were a few things that I do want to go over with the council today, just as a matter of feedback, and just talk a little bit about schedule and what you might expect should we get approval to go out to bid. One of the things that we do, and we did recently, was we did a final page turn with the fire chief and the police chief and staff to kind of go through, every single sheet to make sure that there wasn't any, final things that came to mind. And there were a couple of good comments that came out of that. We made some adjustments to the fire approach lane and some of those types of things, talked through some security stuff. So it was a good opportunity to do that. I do have some discussion on the site and some branding things that I want to talk about today. And certainly if there are any questions related to budget and schedule, that's really our agenda today. Council has seen this floor plan many, many times. It hasn't really changed over the years, or the year that we've been working on this thing since our first kind of design iteration on it. It does bear discussion that we do have an alternate to expand the apparatus bay that we had talked about some time ago. And we do have one alternate to expand the command bay. So those are really our only two big alternates as part of the project. So on bid day, you'll see the number for the base bid project plus those two alternates. But beyond that, we really haven't changed the floor plan. And like I said, we did go through this with both of the departments at an hour plus long meeting just to make sure that, over the course of the last year, there hasn't been any thoughts or changes related to areas of the building. And out of that, we got good consensus from both of our teams that this is the plan that we want to go out to bid with. There are a couple of things that we want to talk about as it looks to the exterior of the building, and a couple of things that we had talked about with the both the police department and the fire department really had to do with how do we want to name this building. This is a new thing for the city. It's a combined police and fire facility, and so we have been calling it public safety facility. There are lots of ways that you can brand these type of buildings, but as part of the bidding documents, we do bid signage and exterior lettering on the building, and so we've been kind of referring to it as the public safety facility for the last year and a half. And so we want to make sure that we don't get to the point of approving shop drawings and putting signs up on the building, and then somebody goes, wait a minute, that's not what we expected. And so we have been, like I said, these things have been called many things. You can continue to call it a police station and a fire station. You can call it a public safety facility. You could call it a public safety center. There are lots of ways to look at it. Most commonly is, some sort of, because this is a, cohabitated building, that, some sort of a public safety logo is, something to think about. So that is one of the areas as we go through the presentation today that you'll see that we have some questions related to that. So not looking for that answer right at this exact moment, but as we go through the presentation, think about that and we will come back to that. So on the section of the building in between the two sets of apparatus doors, we have that larger mast there that we have a sign on. So that would be one location to think about that. The other one is in the main lobby. I think it's self-evident that we're in Virginia, and so some of the conversations, do we need to call it Virginia Police and Fire Station, or is this another opportunity to talk about this as a public safety facility? So we have some signage over the main reception desk to kind of orient people as you come into that lobby space. We are from a branding and kind of each department has their own badge that patch that we have on the glass up above there, so that is also included in the project. And so right now, the discussions have been, let's continue to understand that they are individual departments and they have their own patches and stuff like that. So we do have that opportunity in there, and so we are including that in the project at this point in time, along with the lettering that you see there. And so that's what's actually included in the current set. So again, we have time to change it. So that's, again, another opportunity for some branding as the public interacts with the building. The site is another opportunity for people to kind of engage in the building, and so this is our updated site plan. So this has changed a little bit from our last meeting. So as I had presented this previously, we were still finalizing our stormwater management to comply with B3, and we were still finalizing the solar panels that we're going to need also to comply with B3. And so this is the final proposed site plan. So this is the overall block that includes the southerly development on there. As we zoom in a little bit to where the public safety facility is going to be located, what we did do is enlarge the apron going out onto 2nd Avenue based on feedback from the fire chief as to how they're going to circulate through there. So we enlarged that. So that was really the only main change as far as vehicle circulation on the north side. So otherwise, that looks pretty much the same. We do have 2 plaza areas, one just north of where the public parking area is, and then one on the corner of 2nd and 8th as an opportunity for some branding or some memorial type of stuff. On the southern part of the site, we've adjusted the size of our pond to be more on the easterly side or the westerly side of the site. We have some kind of drainage areas of various depths over there just to give us some variety. One of the pieces of feedback that we got was to remove the fence around the solar panels and just raise them higher off the ground, similar to other installations that you have within the city. So we spread them out a little bit and have them on that easterly side over there. So that should work out just very nice. And keeping in mind, we still have some time for some feedback on the solar panels. Those are not being bid as part of what we're asking for approval on today. Those will be a direct purchase through those state contracting purchases that we have available for it.
A question from Councilor Johnson.
Thank you. With all the trees on here, 2 questions. How many of them are needed for the B3 compliance as opposed to the aesthetic? Because I know in the previous building, we were able to take some out or arrange them better, so it was more cost effective. And 2, I'd want to make sure that the trees are not visual blocks. I know that's one of the concerns, is that having clear sight lines all the way around when they, especially the police, exit the building. So those are my 2 questions about the trees and foliage.
I may need to get back to you as how it relates to compliance with B3. I know that our landscape architects are very familiar with the B3 requirements, and I believe what we have on the site was what's required for plantings and stuff like that. So, but I can get you that exact answer as to how it complies with B3.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. Anyone else? Mr. McNamara?
Okay. So one of the things that I wanted to kind of enlarge and make sure that everybody here understands what we're bidding as part of the project. There are 2 public interaction areas on the site that we've talked about from the very beginning. One of them is the idea of having some sort of a corner plaza where that's an opportunity for some sort of a celebration of our law enforcement, public safety folks. Right now, what we have is included in the project is the concrete that you see there, a bench, and then the plantings around there to kind of frame that space. We are bringing, I believe, a electrical conduit out there for some future type stuff. But as I had talked to the chiefs, that's something that is probably more of a community discussion. So we haven't bid anything as part of it, but it is an opportunity for the council and others to kind of think about what we might put in that location. So we have that available. So I just want to make sure that we're thinking about that and make sure that it's something that the city takes advantage of once it gets built. The other area that we've labeled as Community Event Plaza is just north of the main entrance to the parking lot and just to the west of the building there, to filling in that green space that's right along Second Avenue. And that area, again, is just a free-form concrete with some benches and some trees and some plantings in that area to, again, give a sense of place at the public safety facility that can be used in a variety of ways, either for a community event, an open house, or a celebration of some kind. And so, again, we just want to make sure that we're highlighting that as another opportunity for some connections that are built into the project based on what we had talked about from the beginning. The solar we finalized our numbers that we need to hit for B3, and we're reasonably close to the numbers that I had presented in the past. We are planning on a roof-mounted solar array that will achieve roughly about 120 kilowatts of solar power. It'll be on 3 areas of the roof. On the north side of the apparatus garage, just to the north of the tower that's there. And then in 2 locations on the fire living area and in the police administration area on the east and west side. Obviously, there are other areas on the roof that you could put solar, but we found that based on our conversations with our consultant, that those areas don't produce there's some shading going on there that it just doesn't make sense to put the solar in those locations. And so we need to make up the balance of the 153 kilowatts on grade. And so the ground-mounted array that I showed you in this previous image here is more accurate to the layout that we'll see for that 153 kilowatts of on-grade solar. Again, there is some, as I had mentioned before, there are some new federal tax credits that you can take advantage of that'll help with some of the cost on there. And as I also mentioned, there is a direct purchase option for owners to purchase those off of state contract pricing, because the state has some good programs out there right now that the city should take advantage of as far as direct purchase versus purchasing it through the general contractor or the electrical contractor on site. So the last bit of branding that we have on the site is our monumentation. So as you drive up to the site, we're planning on a monument sign along Second Avenue to try to make sure we're orienting people to the parking area. And so where it's located is just to the north of the drive entry in that grassy area right there. And the image of it to the right is the monument sign itself, where it'll have, again, whatever we decide to call the building. Currently on the monument sign, we have Virginia Public Safety Facility with lettering on both sides of it, so that as you approach the site, you'll be able to identify the building from that orientation as well. So those are the 3 main public areas where people will interact with the building and signage that would be good to get some feedback. So I think before we talk through the final budget, I'll pause here, Mayor, for any questions related to the branding and answer any questions that we might have on the final design.
Thank you, Mr. McNamara. Councilor Beyondich.
Thank you. When you talk about the signage, I myself am not in favor of using the word Virginia if we were to expand this into other areas. I think we should be cognizant of that when we choose signage. And so I know we're getting into the financing part, which I like, but these last 2 items you talked about, the community event plaza and the street corner plaza, how much does that add to this project?
I'll be honest with you, Councilmember, I have not broken it out because it's always kind of been part of our civil and site solution. So I would have to get back to you as far as what the dollar value is for the concrete work. We'd have to swap out the concrete work for some, landscaping, grass or whatever in both of those locations. So certainly it has value, but it's not going to be a significant reduction in cost if we take those out.
Because I know when we first talked about it, our original cost on this project was a lot less. So
Quite a while ago, yes.
It's kind of creeping up, and so now I'm almost backtracking and saying, what do we absolutely need versus making it look pretty? I mean, it looks great, and I'm sure it would be great. The other thing is the maintenance of it. I'm not sure We're stretched thin as it is, and all of this takes maintenance. So that's what as much as I love it, is it a necessity for me? Probably not.
I would say, and Pat can correct me on this, but with what we have there and what we'd have to swap out for landscaping, we're probably in that 20 to 30,000 to take them out. So it's, in the large scheme of things, it's not a lot, but I respect what you're saying as far as the overall cost.
And the other thing is, when we talked about solar, that is not in a bid package, so that will be above what the cost of this building is that correct?
It is, the cost of the bids that we'll be accepting, yes, but in the overall project cost, no. We're carrying $500,000 in the overall project budget to cover the solar that'll be on the building.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Beyondich. Real quickly, as far as the branding goes, I agree. Maybe we leave Virginia off of that. We're in the city of Virginia. I would like to see, it would be up to staff and police and fire, but I'd like to see public safety and then just list out police, fire, EMS, and if there's anything else that needs to be added to later on, you can add that onto it as well. So it's simple, it's straightforward, it tells you what's in there now. If there's anything in the future, you can add that acronym to the rest of them. So that's just a comment to be made. Anybody else? Councilor Johnson?
You, Mayor, and I would agree with that. I would wonder if we need to have the USAR also listed as a part of, I mean, we're one of 2 teams statewide, and taking some credit for that here in Virginia might be an option to put on the sign that we are, this is a regional urban search and, regional urban search and rescue group. So that would be one of the things I'd like considered on that we give ourselves some credit for all the hard work the team has done to get the USAR here in northern Minnesota.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Johnson. Anyone else? Mr. McNamara?
Okay, well, thank you for that feedback. I think that obviously the key to where we're at right now is the budget. I don't know, Pat, if you want to go through this, but the major change is just the additional monies from the state, bonding request that's been added to it, but I won't take your thunder, Pat.
Thank you.
Well, good morning.
Mr. Pat Wertz from Cross Anderson, good morning.
This is the same budget sheet that we went through probably roughly a month ago. The only thing that would probably be changed is the additional $2 million that the state did approve. That's probably the biggest change up top, line item 3, I believe, is the state bonding. That originally was 9.5, and now it's increased to 11.5 million. So that's the biggest change on that sheet from before. I don't know if we want to go through each line item again, but, as we compile things, go back, we're putting together our work scopes and our special requirements. When we go out the street, what that really means is that when we advertise a bid, you got to advertise for roughly 2 weeks, and then the last day, and then you bid the 10th day after that per the state of Minnesota bidding laws. So all the contractors are going to be getting work scopes. For example, like work scope 3A for concrete. Basically what that is basically that's what they're going to be bidding off of in reference to plans and specs, so everything's apples to apples. So there's no unfairness to any contractors. Everybody's bidding off the same things. So that's when I say work scopes, that's what we're referencing to. So once we get it advertised, we will bid it out. It'll be probably now sometime in July. Take it roughly to review all the bids, and to make recommendations going forward. Hopefully with no budget issues. So, yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Questions? Councilor Beyondich.
Would I be able to get a detail of bid packet 1 and bid packet 2 on
Sure.
what
So
there is? And the only reason I'm asking is for that change order. I want to keep track of those change orders that you're taking from bid package 2 to put into 1,
sure.
so I can see the transactions as they're happening.
Okay. So part of the Virginia House demo project, as we call it. That's a different separate job number because it's being tracked differently. So I have a different budget sheet where I'm kind of tracking those changes, but I can get that over.
Thank you. Yes, and that way I can keep track when you're coming forward. I know where the money is coming from and going to.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Beyondich. Any other questions? So what you're looking for here, Mr. Wertz, is item A and B. First, the resolution approving the laws of the state of Minnesota, 2023, Chapter 64, Article 12, Session 16. We need approval for that. Is that correct? And so let's take a look at that. Is that what you have up here now?
No, it's kind of on the schedule now.
Okay, you still working on your presentation here?
No.
Okay, so, all right, so this is the timeline here?
Yep.
And moving forward. And so we need to finalize and sign the contract, as you can see up on the screen there, and the general public can see it as well. But we need 2 resolutions today. First is to the resolution approving the laws, and then approve the plan, specs, and design, and authorize the solicitation of bids for this new project. Councilor Beyondich.
Thank you. Just a random question. When these are out for bid, does it include those 2 park areas that I asked about? The cost of that, would that have any bearing on what these bid packets are? Would they'd be bidding on that as well, correct?
Councilmember, yes. So right now, those are included in the bid documents that you have in front of you. As the schedule shows, we're in the process of finalizing our last coordination with Kraus Anderson. So if it's the wish of the council to remove those 2 areas, I would have the design team make those changes before we go out to bid.
If they go out to bid with them in there, can we make a change, I guess is what
Yes.
I'm asking? Okay, because I don't want to hold the project up over that, but I think it's something worth discussing.
Yeah, and certainly if we get that, if the consensus today is to take them out, we'll try to get those done beforehand, but we'll also have some opportunities during bidding to make some final changes via what we call an addendum. That'll be part of the bid documents, once we do that. And then your favorite thing, change order, we could pull them out by change order later on, should they not get resolved by that point in time.
Okay,
As a
thank you.
deduct. Yep.
Thank you.
One option too is on the bid documents is we could bid those as deduct alternates as well. So we could add those to the documents, so that way you know what the costs are on bid day. So right now, like John mentioned, you have the apparatus bay and the command centers. Basically, those are 2 add alternates. You could add a 3rd alternate saying deduct, this landscape area here in the plaza. So you know what that cost is when it goes to buy it out, they're like, okay, we want to save the value, whatever it is. So that is an option too. Yep.
Thank you, Councilor Beyondich. Mr. Wertz. Councilor Johnson.
Mayor, I'm not in favor of leaving those out because my concern is the paperwork required on your end is going to cancel out any of the redesign or anything, the cost. You've been here a couple times, and every time the amount of design has either stayed the same or increased based on extra work, which I respect. But I think that this building has an opportunity. It's on 2nd Avenue. It is one of the main entries into Virginia, and I think having some public space and having that little bit of niceness as you're coming into Virginia and you're stopping at the 2nd Avenue and 8th Street, there's something nice to look at there. And I know that with the right ask, I'm pretty sure Friends of Public Safety can start working on what those 2 areas can look like and do some additional fundraising for that. I know I haven't been to a meeting in a while, but I know that's always been one of their goals, is to be able to help support that building in any way possible, and fundraising might be that option. So as of now, I'm not in favor of changing any of the bidding stuff for on a $30 million project for $50,000 or something like that. I don't think it's worth our time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm looking at the handout that you have there, and I'm just looking at the section regarding change orders and change order procedures. Could you walk us through that? What I'm seeing is supplemental instructions, proposal requests, and then construction change directives. And they all look like they're more deduct or at no cost. What is the procedure? Is it the same procedure if we have a change order coming forward that is an increase?
Council member, any changes to the construction cost or the procedures of the project after we award the contract would need to be done through a change order process. Now, certainly Kraus Anderson has a contingency built into, if you look through the budget, they have some contingency built into there to take care of some of those scoping things and stuff like that. But if there was a change, like say there was a decision to change the signage after we'd already bid it, we would issue a proposal request to Cross Anderson. They would work with their subcontractors to price out what that change is, and whether it's an add or a deduct, it would come back to the council as a change order. A supplemental instruction technically is a no-cost change that we're just giving direction to the contractor to make these changes, and then if there is a cost, then they would have to bring it back to us to review it before that,
So this is basically just outlining the
It's the procedure, yeah.
Okay, and then if you could, I'm just on the big sheet that you handed out in April. What is our contingency? Was it a percentage of the overall project total?
Yeah, so right now I believe we're carrying $450,000 for owner contingency.
Can you repeat that, Pat?
Well, 450,000, I believe, is on the sheet for the owner contingency. Would be down under owner items, probably
see it.
halfway down.
Yep. Okay, and that's 450,000 for the overall project.
Correct. You know, that number total to go back, because when we bid things out, we actually finalize the budget, and then that number is probably either gonna grow or increase, hopefully grow, when things get kind of bought out and purchased, see where you're at. So now basically we have those funds kind of dedicated towards it.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
So one thing to remember when you talk about change orders to go back, because I know it's not everybody's favorite word, but one of the things on a site like this is much the exploratory work that NTS and your consultants do to understand the soil. On a large site like this, there could be unforeseen things you're gonna find in that soil that haven't been thought about. Just be aware that there could be soil issues. Like I said, everybody's doing the due diligence of it, but things might come up on that. So that is probably one of the bigger risks is the site, even after the houses get taken out. So once we get to that, it should be smooth sailing.
Thank you, thank you, Councilor Paulson, Mr. Wertz. Anybody else before we ask for action on item A and B? Councilor Motley.
Are we still targeting fall of 2024 opening this building?
The goal probably later fall.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Motley. Okay, we're asking for council action today. The first one is 1A, the resolution approving laws of Minnesota 2023, Chapter 64, Article 12, Section 16. Move to approve by Councilor Freely, been supported by Councilor Johnson. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Item 1B, approve the plans, specs, and design, and authorize soliciting bids of the Virginia Public Safety Center project.
So moved.
Move to approve by Councilor Motley, supported by
Support.
Councilor Paulson. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Appreciate it very much. Mason, nice to see you. Good luck in your internship. Okay,
Mayor, if we may skip around just for one brief moment, just so we can get our staff to where they need to be. Item number 7, review request from the Public Works Department.
okay, thank you. I think we have our Public Works Director, Jim Rosvit, here. We're just going to deviate on these two items. If we could hold off from Mr. Steinman and his staff, approve a bid to award the Public Works Garage Heating Upgrades project to the IHS Independent Heating and Cooling. It's the 2023 GEO bond purchase. Any questions, comments from you, Jim? Thank you. Any questions or comments from the council? If not, we're looking for action. Move to approve by Councilor Freely. Is there support?
Support.
A support by Councilor Motley. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Item number 9,
7B,
I'm sorry.
approve the access and use license agreement with RGGS for drainage ditch reestablishment.
Thank you.
So moved.
Move to approve by Councilor Paulson. Is there support?
Support.
By Councilor Beyondich. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries.
And item 7C was approve the bid and award the City Hall re-roof project to AW Kettle and Sons, and this also is a 2023 GEO bond purchase.
Thank you.
So moved.
Move to approve by Councilor Motley. Is there support? Support by Councilor Freely. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries.
And item number 9 is the other item that Mr. Rossfit needs to assist with, and it's review the proposal for exchange of a loader with Virginia Public Utilities.
Okay, thank you. So moved. Move to approve by Counselor Afridi. Is there support?
Support.
By Counselor Motley. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Jim.
Back up to item number 2, Paul Steinman and Steve Scharf from Baker Tilly are here to talk about the issuance of general obligation bonds, Series 2023A.
Good morning, Mr. Steinman, and this is Mr. Scharf from Baker Tilly. Welcome. Once again, nice to see you, Paul. It's been a
Morning.
while.
Good morning, Mayor. Yeah, it's been a while. Mayor and council, good morning. We're here to present details of the resolution that is before you to put in place the upcoming borrowing that you have. And I'm going to introduce my colleague, Mr. Steve Scharf, and he's going to give you the full 1-minute rundown on the resolution. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Paul. Mayor and councilors, start the clock, 1 minute. So we're here today asking for approval on the resolution authorizing the issuance of the city's general obligation, charter bonds, and equipment certificates of indebtedness, Series 2023. These bonds will be, the resolution authorizes the sale of the bonds through a negotiated process with Northland Securities as underwriter. It's an amount in not to exceed $3 million with a not to exceed rate of 5.75% as the parameters. Part of the resolution establishes a pricing committee for awarding these sale of bonds. That pricing committee is comprised of the mayor, finance director, and I believe city administrator. The bonds themselves are financing various acquisitions of capital equipment and improvements throughout the city with a term of around 10 years. I think it's 9 principal payments. These bonds are paid by tax levies per year, starting with the first payment in August of 2024. In addition to that, I think that, like I mentioned, the term is 9 years. And again, we're looking for approval on $3 million of not to exceed principal amount with a rate of 5.75%. Did I miss anything, Paul? All right. Other than that, yeah, I'll be happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you. So just to recap, a first payment would be due August of 2024. It'll go on the tax levy. We're looking at a 10-year note, $3 million to cap it. It is at 5.25 or 5.75%.
The rate in the resolution is 5.75 is
And
the
those
not
are
to
the
exceed.
parameters of it. Okay, thank you very much. That's all the questions that I have. Counselor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so could you explain in our packet, it's broken out with equipment portion, charter portion, and issue summary. And I think what I'm trying to understand is what is our annual payment?
Sure, that's a great question, Counselor. The annual payment is in one of the schedules just below that breakout. I could get you an exact page number on the document, page 8 it sounds like.
Page 8 of our agenda packet.
Yeah, the annual payment amount, I believe for these bonds, for the issue in its entirety, will be about $420,000 estimate, with a levy amount at 105% of $440,000 per year approximately.
Okay, and Counselor Paulson, it may be some additional information that could be disseminated to you. We do have George Eilerson on the phone that might be able to give some more clarity.
That would be great if that's possible. And then I guess my overall question is, how is that going to impact our levy then going forward over the course of the term, 9 years? And then I think when George was here last time, we had discussed that the interest rates on bonds were still hanging at that 3.75%. So is that a normal thing that we do to go up and cap it at up to 5.75%?
George?
Good morning, Mayor, members of the council, and thank you, Steve and Paul from Baker Tilly, for your presentation this morning. And as as Mr. Scharf presented, this is a parameters resolution, so it just gives you the high end of a range that the bonds can be priced at. And Steve, do you have, and I don't have it in front of me here right now, but do you have what the TIC is on that 9-year pricing?
Yeah, thanks, George. We do have an estimate on the pricing showing around a 4.5%. So it is quite a bit lower than the parameters, but it is a parameter as a not to exceed. Certainly worth mentioning.
Okay, and then, thank you for that, George. And then just the second half of that is, how is this going to impact then Virginia's levy for the overall course of the bond, the life of the bond, 10 years or a 9-year payoff?
I'll jump in, Steve, or initially here, and then toss it back to you. Similar structure, council member and mayor and council, that we've looked at, certainly throughout on this process, where it's been the 3 million over the 10 years, and so that doesn't change that much. Certainly, interest rates can move a little bit. We saw with the debt ceiling wrangling that went on in Washington, we saw interest rates move higher due to the uncertainty of when that would get resolved. Interest rates are starting to trend down a little bit, which is a positive here, certainly. And generally speaking, when Steve or I or Paul are standing in front of you at this stage, we're typically showing you conservative interest rates. And the hope is certainly when we're pricing these bonds, and as Steve can relay that, we're looking into July for that the hope is certainly that interest rates trend lower to that point. So the approximate levy, $400-some thousand per year, is consistent with what we've been showing the city council throughout this process. And then, other projects such as your public safety project, public safety center project, we've talked about that as well, that, primarily levy supported or wholly levy supported on that debt. But that there's, the ability to lower that with other debt falling off. But Mayor, Council, certainly, or Steve, if there's anything to add to that, please do.
Thank you. Councilor Paulson, I believe to answer a little bit more of your question, while Sherry may be able to answer with respect to the levy.
And if you don't mind, I just want to open it up just a little bit further. So I guess what my overall question is, that annual payment of about 443,000 or whatever it is, how is that going to impact? Because we just had one of our GO bonds, or 2 sunsetted, or 2 are paid off. So I'm just wondering what the overall impact then going forward when we commit to this 10-year adoption of these GO bonds. How is that? Is it going to stay the same, decrease? Is it going to increase? Because on the sheet, it says it's 105% of the levy.
Sherry?
Mayor and Council, very good questions, Councilor Paulson. First of all, the 105% levy, and Paul probably can tell you guys better, but that's a standard levy. There's a 5% admin fee that's put in there for processing, so that's a standard thing. The 2 bonds that did drop off earlier this year in February, we're around $400,000.
Okay.
So another thing that I was going to ask is, Paul, is this a callable bond? I mean, in the next 10 years, I do think the interest rates are going to come down and we can refinance.
Yeah, great question.
That's,
We do have a call provision in the structure. One of the benefits of working with George at Northwind Securities is we have the option of determining what's most favorable to the city. So we are assuming a call option within the structure. I don't think that'll change. Currently, we're looking at a 2031 first prepayment date.
And further, you did break out some of the wish list for the capital from the equipment, but it's all one. It's going to be all one bond, but you had it broken out.
That's right, yeah. It'll be all one issuance of Series 2023A bonds. It'll just be broken out just to show the differences in more or less statutory authority.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Paulson, does that clarify what you need?
That absolutely did, and I think what I was looking for is when those sunsetted or we paid those off, the impact is actually not going to be anything to our taxpayers, is what I was trying to get at. And I shouldn't say anything because it's been part of that levy. It's nothing different compared to was the lifespan on those 10 years as well? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Counselor Paulson. Anyone else? You need action from us?
Yeah, we're looking for the adoption of the resolution.
Very good, thank you. So if there are no other questions, I will look for council action. Counselor Johnson.
I'll move the resolution regarding the issuance of general obligation bond series 2023A.
Okay, moved by Counselor Johnson. Is there support? A support by Counselor Freelieb. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries.
I will move the resolution for 2B.
Counselor Johnson moves a resolution authorizing the reimbursement under the General Obligations Bond Series 2023A.
Support.
Support by Counselor Motley. Is there any further discussion?
What this resolution does is it allows us to pay ourselves back if in case the ambulance we already ordered or the Vector truck we ordered come in before the bond money comes in, we can still make that payment. We can just pay ourselves back with that bond money once it comes in.
Very good. Yes, thank you for that explanation,
Welcome.
Britt. Okay, so it has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Steinman, Mr. Sheriff, thank you kindly.
Thank you. Item number 3 is Mr. Matt Reed from SCH, our engineer of record, to discuss potential 2023 road resurfacing project priorities. And this comes from the May 26, 2023 Street and Alley meeting.
And thank you, welcome. I'm glad you're here. I was been over the weekend with a number of people in the community about this street process, so hopefully they'll all be able to be listening in as you give your presentation as we make our adjustments. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning. So in your packet, I believe you've got some estimates and some maps and some things that show some possible candidates for mill and overlay or reclaim and overlay projects that we're considering for this summer. Not necessarily all of them. Between Jim and myself and Britt, and I know Britt had some input from others, also from the Street and Alley Committee meeting that we had a week or two ago. There was some input there. We put together a list of streets that might be candidates for a reclaim and an overlay, or possibly even a mill and an overlay this summer. As you guys know, we are not probably going to have a street reconstruction project this summer just because of the timing on the funding and some of those things. So it's not going away. It's just going to get delayed until next year. And so there was some discussion at Street and Alley about the possibility of continuing to move forward with the city's efforts on maintenance for the streets, and if there were some opportunities to prioritize some of those streets to get that done, then we can move ahead with that. And so what you're looking at in your packet are those list of streets that we had discussed between, again, Street and Alley, Britt, myself, Jim. And so the goal was to get your feedback. Maybe you have some that you would like to add to the list instead. I don't know what the budget looks like. Britt can probably discuss that a little bit more when the time comes. But I'll leave it at that, and I'll try to answer some questions if I can.
Okay, thank you. I'd just like to make one comment. Of all the streets, we have to pick something. And 17th Street up north there, going to the name of that?
Edgewood Vista.
Edgewood Vista, I apologize. Little blank spot, Edgewood Vista. So, yeah, I mean, so I know there's others too, but whether we fill it in, do a mill overlay or a skim coat, whatever you decide, that's one of the streets, and I know we discussed the others at Street and Alley. So that's all the comments I have. Opening up to the rest of the council. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 2 questions. The first one is, when we did the Super One agreement last year and did that overlayment, that's still in really good shape. I mean, I don't know how long they're expected to last, but do you recall an estimated what that cost from Mesabi Bituminous on that one? And it was a shared cost with Super One.
I think it was about 38,000.
That's what I was gonna say, about 35 to 40.
So, okay, so could we kind of get a general, I guess what I'm trying to understand is, how much money do we have? What do we think is an approximate cost to do some overlaying and fixing? And then that might help me to determine, like the mayor, what streets we'd like to maybe add on to that. Is there something that we could get a document in terms of what, I guess, money we might have available?
This is not planned, so there's no budget set
there's
yet.
nothing.
Big but. When Street and Alley talked, they talked about, we are gonna, if we don't do anything this year, we're going to go a whole year without any street construction, which is fine, because in 2024, we are gonna have a lot of street construction. But however, it's just, there's some streets, like we talked about at Street and Alley, and Matt was mentioning too, 17th Street North, was the other one that was really bad.
15th Avenue.
15th Avenue, that are just dire problems. 6th Avenue North is a portion of it. We know that that's going to be reconstructed in 24, 25. But we don't know that we can wait much longer. We're getting insurance claims on some of these streets because of the deterioration of them. So the reason we want to talk to Street and Alley and the council was that we might have to look at taking some of our reserves, small amount, 150, 200,000, and creating some kind of small project that we can get done this year.
And I guess I'd like to know, could this be considered any type of economic development that we could draw from some of our economic development funds, or maybe see if IRRR would pitch in for part of that?
That was my plan. I was going to talk to the IRRB. We do have a grant for the infrastructure projects, but I haven't had the conversation with them yet if I could use part of it for some of these overlays. I will have that conversation with them, but I need to kind of know where the council's feeling, if you want to do something this year. If we
Okay.
don't do something, there is no harm, no foul. We'll keep on patching. But there's just some that really need some attention.
Okay, thank you for that. And then my last, go ahead, Matt, go ahead.
Oh, finish. Please
Just my
finish.
last question. I was actually driving by the Humane Society yesterday, and they did a beautiful job on that. It's not wavy and bumpy anymore. But I have a question. When we're driving over, like where the manholes are, and it's a cutout square, you really hit those. I feel like it's a plowing reason, or is that an issue with the reason that they're recessing that? So plows, the blade doesn't hit if the manhole cover is raised?
Yeah, and they might not be done with those yet. I'd have to
They
get down there and
fill
take a
those?
look. They've got another lift of blacktop to put down still, so they're actually raising them up. So they might not, I'd have to go look, but normally they're recessed slightly because they will move with the frost.
Right.
Usually actually the road moves. It's not so much that the structure will move, the road will move. And so you don't want to have them up flush or too high, because then the plows hit them and then they get broke. And
When
not
we
to
did-
mention the
when we
damage into
did
the plows.
Third, or when they did Third last year, so they're supposed to be doing, because those are pretty recessed. I mean, those aren't just a small amount, they're pretty darn recessed.
Yeah, they'll come up more.
So they will fill those.
And they'll adjust them with the next lift.
Yeah.
Okay.
They should be, in most cases, they're usually about a quarter, half is getting a little extreme, but they try to get, it's construction, so, but within about a quarter of an inch of the surface is what they try to get them to.
Thank you for that. And I'm all in favor of potentially moving forward with some overlayment if we can find some funding. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Matt?
Yeah, I want to clarify something just real quick, because you mentioned 17th Street. So what we did on 17th Street last year was a very short-term Band-Aid of just a simple thin overlay. What we're talking about for some of these other streets, they are really in bad, not that 17th wasn't, that was in pretty tough shape too, but we knew that within a year or two, we were gonna come back in and do a full reconstruct on it, so that real thin overlay was just a Band-Aid fix. If we're gonna spend the money on like a 17th or a 15th Avenue or some of these other streets that are probably 10+ years out, we're not gonna just wanna come in and put down a real thin overlay. It just won't last. It'll peel right off over in a couple of years and all the cracks. And quite frankly, even in some of those streets, it would be hard to even get that to work because they're so beat up. So just keep that in mind. So what we're really talking about for those streets is either milling the blacktop off, if there happens to be concrete underneath them, like we've done on some other streets, mill the blacktop off the concrete, put a leveling course on, and then repave it. If there is no concrete under it, we would probably actually reclaim, which we grind it all up and blend it with the base that's under there, grade it out, and then pave it again. And so if we did that and we had a decent base, those could last 10 or 15 years. I mean, maybe longer if we're lucky. So just please keep that in mind.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. First, we'll go to Counselor Beyondich. Just go around the room and then we'll round. Counselor Beyondich.
Thank you. Could you explain to the public, so they understand the funding and how the funding works, that we won't be able to do a lot of the big projects till next year? Thank you.
Sure. So we got some money from various funding agencies. The various agencies have their requirements that need to be met prior to them approving the plans or approving us to go ahead for bids. So for example, 10th and 13th Street, that project is being run through, it's a federal funded program that we got money from, and it's running through state aid, MnDOT state aid, the state aid office. It also requires federal aid review, so it requires state aid review, federal aid review, okay? So there's requirements that we have to meet before they'll give us authorization to bid, okay? We don't have all of the information we need yet. We're working on it. We've been working on it for the past 6 months, and we're close, really close. But once we get that information submitted, then all the reviews can be done, and they will say, all right, you're good to go, advertise for bids. At this point in the year, even if we got the okay tomorrow, today, we're not in a real good time of the year to be bidding projects. The contractors are busy. We're probably not going to get real competitive bids, not to mention by the time we're done bidding it in July and awarding it late July, early August, they don't have time with our short construction season now to get going on it. So the decision was made, let's get our ducks in a row, and we'll bid it later this fall and start construction next year. So it really comes down to the funding agencies, the requirements they have, and us being able to provide them what they need to authorize us to move forward. Does that make sense?
Counselor Beyondich?
Thank you. Yes, it does. And I think it clarifies to the public that we're not just holding up these projects. It's a bigger picture of where the money comes from and how the money has to be spent. So thank you for explaining that.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Counselor Johnson.
Thank you. Is there any assessment or anything when it comes to these short-term?
So we certainly could. To do an assessment, it would take a minimum of, I believe, 60 days. I'm thankfully Paul and Steve are still here. Just guessing, to get a public hearing, to get MATA feasibility report approved, to get a public hearing together, we're looking at 60 days minimum. So again, we'd be fighting that construction season timeline.
And I'm not necessarily in favor of a assessment for a Band-Aid, but we do need the Band-Aids, and I think that making an effort on some of these streets is significant. On that 17th Street North is the number, I can't imagine what we're doing to our ambulances every day. Just those alone going over that, and y'all did a great job of trying to level it off with, it's not class 5, but they did some, but it's still, it's gonna rain, it's gonna come out. So I think doing some longer term Band-Aids on these streets is what we need to do to make some progress until we can get a good plan moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Johnson. Counselor Freely?
So like the Southern Drive project that's, I thought ended at like 20th Street, so that'll continue all the way to 17th Street then in the future?
The future.
And then will that also include new curbs and sidewalks all the way down then?
Yeah, I think that segment is on the next, I have to go back and look, but I'm fairly certain from 20th to 17th is on the next phase of projects, so that would get a full reconstruct. There is infrastructure under there that needs to be replaced as well, so curb and gutter, storm sewer, roads, the whole.
I'm just inquiring because a resident this weekend asked about that, and when it continues, will they get the same that was provided further down the road?
That's the intention, yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
One other thing.
Yeah, please.
Somebody, the entryway off of 53 North into the golf course, somebody mentioned that yesterday too, should that be in consideration before somebody gets whiplash going over it?
You're talking about the big bumps from the culverts?
Yeah.
Yeah. MnDOT is in the process of going through a plan to do some work on Highway 53 in that area, and they are going to do some work at that intersection. there's, if I remember right, there's two big bumps there. One of them's MnDOT's, one of them's the city's. And we've had some discussions at staff level about, do we have city staff go out and do it? Do we hire a contractor to do it? Or do we just hang tight for a little while longer? And when MnDOT's out there, it'll be real economical to just have their contractor fix it. So it's being reviewed, yes. And something will be done in the not too distant future with that.
Well, thank you, Councillor Freely. Councillor Motley.
So how do we move forward with maybe picking some streets and doing some Band-Aids? Do we have to make a motion or get estimate? Like, what do we do next?
Well, I believe we need to make a recommendation of which streets are going to be done and then give the authority to staff to do so. So do we have a list of Britt and Matt about where we want to go? Your suggestions. It should be in the packet.
Yep, and I believe Jim had recommended in a subsequent email after I sent that all out, the ones that we had put on there for 10th Street South, we should scratch those for now. There's some other underlying issues that need to be dealt with there, so it's not worth doing a mill and overlay on those. So other than that street, the ones that are on that list in your packet would be the ones that at this point we'd recommend. I think the biggest thing is setting some sort of a budget. I mean, well, how much do you want to spend? Because that'll really drive how much that we can actually do. So you have some estimates to go by at least to start with, so you might see what it might cost. And then if that looks like a reasonable number, we can start there. Otherwise, we can back off or add if you'd like to.
If I may, I think the motion should be to minus the 10th, was it 10th Avenue? 10th Street.
10th Street.
The 10th Street, and approve my perspective is to approve what's in the packet and give staff the opportunity to review what can be done, prioritize those that are in the packet, determine how much money we have, and come back to the council for a final approval for that particular project. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you. Councilor Freely, do you have something else?
I would make a motion to approve that recommendation that's in the packet.
Okay, thank you.
And then question I was gonna, or I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
please do, go ahead. No, go ahead.
As far as like the reserves, I turn to Sherry for like, what's the amount that we could consider from the reserves to utilize for the patching and repairing?
Sherry?
This is, sorry, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Council, Councilor Freely, this, Matt, is around $1 million, right? If I add up it all? A little under?
Yeah, it should be under $1 million.
Yeah. I just asked Britt, well, we could take it from reserves. We do have some investments. We do have some in, we just actually did some short-term CDs. We could take $1 million and do an internal loan back to ourselves, pay ourselves back the interest. Then we eliminate a lot of fees and whatnot. We could do that and get it done. I think it is well worth the Band-Aid. And in the meantime, I'd like to maybe, check out some other grants out there if we have opportunity. But it is doable.
And the payback would be, when we get some more grant funding, we could pay ourselves back for the money that we put out in the first place, correct?
Correct, or we don't suck it all out of the investments. Use the grant money to offset.
So, Councilor Freely did make a motion to move forward with the recommendation based on the packet minus 10th Street. Is there support for that?
Support for discussion?
Support by Councilor Motley for discussion, further discussion. I think first, Councilor Beyondich had her light on. First, Councilor Beyondich, and then over to Councilor Motley.
And I guess I was going to ask, when you say we'll pay ourselves back, if we don't get the grant money and things don't come through, how do we pay ourselves back?
Sherry?
You budget.
In the levy, every year in the budget, she would put a line item to pay back into investments, a set dollar amount over so many years, so that you basically keep socking away money back into that investment again. Theoretically, to use it again for something else once it's paid back. So theoretically, you just keep rolling this money through.
So it would be on the levy.
Sherry?
Correct. And we do it over 5, 10 years, whatever you felt. This is a 15-year overlay usually lasts, and you do want to pay it off before it's 15 years.
Was that a question? Yeah, I would say 10 to 15 years would be the, if we do the reclaim and overlay, I would think you could get 10 to 15 years out of it, yes.
And are these streets slated then for an overhaul? I mean,
Not
are we?
anytime soon. That's why we chose these streets. They aren't
Okay.
anywhere on our radar for
Okay.
the next 2-year projects, so it's all the way through 2027. So they're not, except for 6th Avenue. That one is a Band-Aid, kind of like 17th Street South by Super One. That one, they're talking about doing a skim coat, just that layer of bituminous, just to get us by until we start doing that. the overlay.
And then I'm not sure I was clear on these streets, would the residents be assessed for this?
We could, if we bonded. However, if we do that, that's going to add 2 months' time on, so we wouldn't be going out for bid to August. We probably wouldn't get it done this year, so it would be kind of not fruitful for the timeframe. If we really wanted to do something in this construction season, we need to move now, and we don't have the time to do the hearings that we required.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And just before we move to Councilor Motley, real quick. So, Sherry, clarify for the council, we are getting a substantial increase in local government aid moving forward. And so I know that, that the money could be earmarked for other things, but could that particular thing help a little bit with these projects?
Of course it can help, but yes, it will be earmarked, and we do have some bigger bills coming in, that being the public safety that you just seen.
Okay, thank you.
But I would definitely suggest doing an internal loan. We've done it before. If it's under $1 million, I can tell you right now, we have 600,000 sitting in the general fund investment, and I sent out investments to you last week, I think, and so then around the 15th, you'll get an updated one. But the other one is, we have 3.5 million in the sewer investments that we borrowed against ourselves for the highway, the bridge. It's back in there, making some money. So I just say, you probably legally, if I'm correct, we can do an internal loan and pay yourself back the interest to make money on the money you have.
Does that answer your question? Okay, thank you. Councilor Motley.
Oh, I just want to say the reason I support Councillor Freelieb's motion is because I think it's important that it looks like we're doing something to our streets, since it looks like the big projects aren't starting until next year. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Councilor Motley. So it has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Matt.
Welcome.
Thank you, Matt. Item number 4, Stuart Johansson, Northland Realty, to request an approval to modify city right-of-way for extensive rehab project at 731 10th Street North.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Johansson, would you please state your name for the record, and welcome to the council meeting, and I apologize for you having to wait so long to appear.
Stuart Johansson. I do a lot of project for some doctors in the area that have been purchasing properties, trying to fix them up, provide housing for our medical people coming into the area. Today I'm in front of you looking for your support and approval to modify a little bit of 8th Avenue to remove a tree that's city-owned in the boulevard, do a curb cut so that we can provide off-street parking for 3 vehicles. And we have some challenges that are there in terms of a utility pole, a WSO that's sitting right off the alleyway. And it also limits us that we can't have parking for 3 vehicles. I can't think of any better way to do this than to come off of 8th Avenue. And by doing so, I know you have a few things in your file. I brought a kind of a quick printout if I hand them out real quick.
Yeah, please, if you would. Thank you. So is this right across from the number 2 golf course on the green there?
No, it's kitty corner to the Washington Manor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
It was a big old green well, it's a green building now, but it was a triplex that had burnt a number of years back.
Yes, thank you.
So we're approaching this from a multitude of different avenues, and I guess the first one is safety concerns. I don't believe we can have vehicles trying to enter or exit the property off of the alleyway. There's now a room to turn in there. We've got that power pole that's definitely going to be a problem. And we also have to consider snow removal and public safety, so we're proposing that the apron and the parking pad actually come in from the alley a little ways to allow room for snow in the winter months and move that away. The other challenge or thing, of course, that we just heard Matt talking about too, is our construction season. We are also very limited in time. Our building's done. We really would like to get it occupied. And this is the last piece of our puzzle. Shame on me, I didn't realize I was going to need to go through this process of city approval to do the curb cut and put the apron in there. So I'm just looking for some support and some help and approval from you councilors to make some changes to the city property.
Have you been to planning and zoning yet?
We've done our applications.
Oh, very good.
We've done those already. We've talked with the public utilities. Jim has been over there to take a look at the site. Maybe he would like to weigh in on what his thoughts are when he has a moment.
Sure.
I think we've kind of been very careful about, what we've done and to make sure that it's complying with everything that goes on with the city. Reinvestments. The existing sidewalk that comes through there is quite deteriorated already, so this is going to eliminate, safety issues there as well. The curb is pretty rough shape. Actually, 8th is in pretty rough shape. So it's private money. We're not asking for any money from the city, any special agencies. We're just trying to improve the area and provide some housing. And I'll answer any questions anybody has.
Thank you. Councilor Johnson.
And that was my first question too, Mayor, was has this been to planning and zoning, and what has that committee said about the recommendation? So that it hasn't been through that committee yet. I pause because they're the ones with Jenny who will look at it and see if it meets what we need met. And on that, then my question, it would be, is the parking pad deep enough so that the cars will not be blocking the sidewalk?
Yes.
Okay. I guess I would want to get a recommendation from the planning and zoning department before I weigh in on whether or not this fits the aesthetic of the neighborhood and the long-term planning of what the city wants.
Thank you, Councilor. I'm sorry, please, go ahead.
The aesthetic of the neighborhood, I do think it's noteworthy to mention that the adjacent properties across the street and Kitty Corner, both on the alleyway, have their driveway and approaches off of 8th Avenue as well. So it's staying consistent with what's already in place in that area. As far as planning and zoning is concerned, I may have missed somebody, but I have reached out to just about everyone I think I needed to talk about concerns. Again, maybe Jim wants to weigh in a little bit on his thoughts.
Thank you. You have
But he said,
no opposition one way or the other? Jim Rosvid, our Public Works Director. Jim?
Morning.
Morning.
Yeah, I did look at it. My opinion is I would recommend off the avenue also. In the alley, it's a tight radius. There's a power pole there right on the corner, large one, lot going to it. I don't want to see that damaged. There is a water shut off right in that alley. And across from that parking spot, there's a garage up against basically the property line of the alley. So them making that radius in or out from that alley is going to be tougher on them. And if it comes off the avenue, which Everything else up on that avenue, they all have that off-street parking. There's one exception because they put a retaining wall there and they have a hillside there. But I think it would be better for us, a maintenance part with the winter too, where we can clean our alley and take care of that radius and keep that open where we're not fighting that either. That's my opinion on that.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. Counselor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. So I do have a couple of questions for you, just so I'm understanding. The existing garage that's there, is that going to be demoed then?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a safety hazard.
Okay, so that's going to be demoed, and then the proposed parking pad space is that 36 by 36. And then on your handout that you just gave us, what is WSO?
Oh, that's the water shut off. That's
Oh, water shut off.
coming up from the,
So then what would need to be done from the utility side? Like, that's not something,
nothing.
so nothing, so it's just left alone?
We're looking for permission today.
Okay, so when you applied to planning and zoning, is it a variance that you applied for?
No, it was just a permit.
A permit?
They said, hey, Christina interjected and just suggested that, normally it's a two-step process. How you word it, forgive me, because I'm kind of new at all this, but the street and alley committee, this would be a better approach to come before the council today to get approval to remove the tree. That we're under a little bit of a time constraint ourselves. Not only are we trying to occupy this, but with the construction season, it's really, really hard right now to get contractors. And we have a commercial contractor that handles all the Walmart projects in Minnesota that's up here. I have a Shirt Tail relative that's working with them, and their crews are willing to take care of this while they're up here. We would be very grateful if we could somewhat fast track this.
If I may, the community development permitting planning office does have the ability to do driveway curb cut permits. They do that all the time. The question that Christina has is there's a city tree that needs to be removed. And then the city sidewalk is so old and it's awful.
Dilapidated,
It's kind of going up and down. That would have to be removed as well, which is why she needs to talk to the council and street and alleys, because it would require removal of sidewalk and removal of tree.
Okay, so we don't have a recommendation yet.
And we would not get one from planning and zoning because there is no structures, there's no
it.
variances needed. So this is why it would go to street and alley instead of planning and zoning, is what's coming to the council.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, no
clarifying.
problem.
That's what I was trying to
Jim's got his
understand,
hand.
where we are at in our process.
Yeah, so Jim's got his hand up back there as well.
Don't have all those fancy words.
Okay,
to
no,
get
that's
there.
okay. And then on the triplex, is it currently occupied with 3 occupants?
No, we've just did the final inspection with Christina last Friday. We're ready to start putting people in there. We really want to get this parking situation resolved first.
And then I used to schedule Dr. Brady in the ER, so I know Dr. Brady very well.
Nice, okay, good.
So how many other properties does he have for, I'm assuming these are for locums physicians?
33 units across the Iron Range here, between Chisholm, Eveleth, Virginia, and Aurora.
So like Virginia, I think the radius is 15-mile radius that you need to be away from the hospital, or a 15-minute drive.
Right,
So
there's some issues with that.
this is just part of my own questioning for our housing needs going forward and with locums physicians. So how many are in our area?
Within the hospital, I would say that we are probably 23 units.
Hey, that's wonderful. Yeah, and then is it just solely practitioners, or is it nursing staff as well?
It's nursing staff as well, Travelers Haven, and sometimes, depending on the property, it was a little bit different when Dr. Brady first started all this. They actually had a contract with the
I
Virginia
remember
Hospital.
that, yep.
Subsequently, when Essentia took over, that contract went away. So we do rent to the general
But
public.
he's still maintaining the availability.
Absolutely.
For the traveling nurses and physicians that come forward. That's wonderful. I really appreciate that, and please say hi to Dr. Brady.
Well, thank you.
And I guess going forward, I'd like to understand what the costs associated with are, and I'm comfortable if we can do this, if Jim is comfortable with it, Christina. So,
Would you come forward a little bit? Thank you. And yeah, can we speak in the microphone so everybody could hear? Thank you. Matt?
Yeah, without getting into a lot of design details, it's just at the end of the day, hopefully the contractor that you hired knows the ADA rules. And all I'm suggesting is that if once the apron is put in, it needs to be put in a way that the sidewalk and that whole area will remain ADA compliant. So, it would take me a while to stand up here and explain what that all means.
Right. We don't have intentions of replacing any of the sidewalk segments.
No, but you're cutting into the sidewalk, right, to put the apron in?
We're going to end,
And
the
that
apron's
piece won't
going to
be ADA
start
compliant.
and stop right at the existing joint on the sidewalk, the existing sidewalk.
Yep. And without belaboring the discussion here with the whole committee, if you cut out a section of sidewalk to put the apron in, that potentially could make that portion of the sidewalk not ADA compliant.
I see. If you have any specs on that you want to provide us,
I can.
will provide it to them and we'll ask them to make sure that's incorporated.
So quickly for me, street and alley is here right now. I know we normally would have a street and alley meeting, but to talk about moving forward as far as removing the sidewalk, your contractor's taking care of all that. Christina, you've already applied for the permit. Christina has directed you to come to us for respect to how this gets removed, and is in particular for the city tree to be removed. Would that be removed at your cost if so approved?
Thank you. That'd be great.
A city tree, would that be removed at your cost?
Yes, that's our cost.
That's your, okay, thank you. Councilor Beyondich.
Thank you, and I'll drag this out a little bit longer because I walk by there every day. And kudos for fixing that up.
Thank
I mean, I lived up the block from that house for a long time, and I've watched the process, and they are doing a wonderful job with that house.
Thanks.
So
We try.
I'm hoping we can get this tied up for you so you can continue and get that usable, because the home itself, you've done a beautiful job with. So thank you.
Much appreciated. Thanks.
So, thank you. So for me, it's, I support this because you're improving the environment, the community, access to different kinds of housing opportunities for that. As long as Christina authorizes the issue of the permit, she'll ensure that the apron is ADA compliant as far as the sidewalk goes. I think the question was, will the city council approve the authorization of the removal of that tree to accommodate your construction project? And I don't have a problem with that as long as there's no cost to the city. You comply with the requirements of the permitting with respect to insurance and contracting and all those kind of things. So I don't have any problem whatsoever with this project. Councilor Freely.
I don't either, but has there been conversations with any immediate neighbors with regard to the tree removal or any other concerns with the project?
Honestly, there's been no conversation with any of the neighbors regarding that.
Because some trees in this community are very valuable to people. We've found that out. So, I mean, that would be a conversation that probably should be had. Just kind of FYI.
Point well taken. I mean, we've got, I believe it's an attorney that lives across the way from us that would be the most directly impacted. He's been pretty actively hanging out at the job site or keeping an eye on things there anyhow, so you could ask if that would offend him.
I'm just saying I don't feel there's any opposition to moving forward with the development of this space in this room. That doesn't mean that there isn't elsewhere in the city or in that neighborhood, and I would try and get that clarification as soon as possible too.
What would you propose? What would you like to see done? Do you want a letter to be sent out to
some kind of
Block radius,
communication.
or-
I think that would be advisable. I don't know, you know, I guess I could go look at the site. Is that advisable from people that have a visual perspective of that? Because I don't right now, but
When's
just,
the last time you went to Super, I'm not trying to be an ass, but go to Super One and every tree along the boulevard's been cut down and there's a stump sitting up. You know, I don't know, did everybody go to all the neighbors in the neighborhood to get permission or get their opinion on those trees coming down?
they gave their opinions. Believe me.
Leave you.
We've got
Okay.
lots of opinions on that. So anyhow, that's just a suggestion, like, because we have had that kind of concern in town with regard to the removal of trees. Anyhow, so, but I'm not opposed to this project whatsoever. I just want to make sure that anybody impacted would be thoroughly communicated with and their approval would be sought as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go to Councilor Johnson, Christina, could you come up forward for a moment? She just walked into the room. So we were talking about this, the permit that applied for and the recommendation that she come to us and ask for permission to move forward. So your comments and concerns about anything, is that just respected to the approval to have the city tree knocked down, or are there other issues with respect to that permit?
I had talked about it, well, through email with Matt and Jim, and I'm on the same wavelength, I guess, as Matt Reed on the situation for an alley. Access to it, it may not be what he wants, but
A part of that permitting process do you automatically, as the, before you issue a permit, do you usually contact the neighbors saying that, you know, this construction is going on, there's a tree there, or that falls upon the owner or the project contractor?
on city property, so technically, you guys would have to give approval. It's not on private property.
Right. So, but you would be notifying the neighbors of anything? Okay, well, thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. Councilor Johnson?
Mayor, based on the information provided by the staff, I would move that we allow for the plan as presented, including permission to remove the tree, and that sidewalk maintain its ADA compliance.
Okay, thank you. Moved by Councilor Johnson, supported by Councilor Freely. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So move forward. Thank you very much for coming in, sir. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Matt.
Next item on the agenda is item number 5, the Alcott Park Entrance Project. The first one is a resolution accepting the donation for the Alcott Park Entrance Project from U.S. Steel in the amount of $100,000.
I'll thankfully move that.
Councilor Paulson moves to approve, and it's supported by Councilor Motley.
For discussion.
And further discussion, just want to say, what a great donation again from our mining companies. It is the engine that drives our economy, so thank you. Councilor,
Yes, how did US Steel know that we were short so much money? Britt, were you behind the funds on that?
Yes,
Or
I got a phone call from an employee at U.S. Steel, said that their foundation's looking to donate money around here for a project. And so they asked me what we were working on, and just that day before, we happened to get the bids back and noted that we were 100,000 short. So I told them about a few things we had in plan, and then told them about this U.S. Steel project. And then I come to find out, after we got the money from U.S. Steel, that the park is named for a U.S. Steel employee. That was John Alcott.
Alcott, yeah.
So that's why they were so particular. And they did ask that we do a plaque or some kind of signage designating and some kind of ribbon cutting when we start the project. So,
absolutely. Awesome.
isn't that
Thank you,
great?
Britt.
Yeah, thank you.
thank you. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item is the approve the bid for the Alcott Park Entrance Project. This was tabled from May 23rd meeting, and we do have Matt Reeder, city engineer of record here.
Okay. Thank you. It's, the bid project was, I understand, from one bidder only? That was Lency? Two bids?
It was
Okay,
two.
please go
Lency
ahead.
was a low bidder.
Okay, thank you.
I'll move to approve.
Counselor Paulson moves to approve item B. Is there support? By Counselor Brunzelli. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Paulson.
Thank you. I just have one question, Matt. On the, when we tabled that, it was mainly due to lack of funding. Now we have the funding, but is that bid quote still hold Did they give a time frame on that? And just to make sure we're not going to get a change on that?
Yeah, I'll double check on that. It was a 30-day bid, and I don't believe we've gone through 30 days yet, but even if we have, I'll double check with Lindsay and make sure that there's no issues.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Counselor Paulson. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries.
Thank you. Item number 6 is approve a resolution ordering the removal of a hazardous building at 126 7th Street South, and this is a structure that's had 2 fires within 1 year.
Moved.
Moved to approve by Counselor Motley, supported by Counselor Johnson. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Don't you have some, Counselor Freely?
Is that a city demolition then? We do that, or?
Nope, what happens is we tried to serve the person, that can't find them, so we're gonna have to go through the court process to order the demolition.
Costs would be incurred by the owner?
It'll cost to be incurred by the city and then placed as an assessment on the property.
Thank you.
And if there are any insurance proceeds, we would keep 25% of those?
Correct. For the first fire, we did get insurance proceeds, so we still have those funds that we're holding. Fire escrow proceeds, they're called. Second fire, we've gotten no response from anybody, not surprisingly, but we'll continue on with the process.
Thank you. Moved and supported. And further discussion, Counselor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Was that property a rental property? Is it a landlord that's out of town?
Out of Duluth area.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries.
Thank you. Item number 8 is review and determine City of Virginia priority list for fiscal year 2024 State of Minnesota bonding requests. In your packet, you'll see the last list we had approved, and we've gone through most of those projects.
Yeah, thank you. And I did have a conversation, as I do on a regular basis, with Mike Jarek, our lobbyist, and he's looking for some more challenges going down in the legislature and looking for some, what we consider to be our priorities for next bonding project. And, we're talking about it now. We don't have to make decisions exactly, but we're looking for some suggestions moving forward.
I have
so
to
that-
submit by June 30th.
Yeah, by June 30th, correct, yes. Thank you. Counselor Beyondich.
Can we keep going back for the public safety building? And
Not for, once construction started, you can't go back and ask for additional funds for construction.
Okay, is there anywhere that we can go and look for money for that project?
In addition to the 11 million we've gotten so far and the million from IRRB, I don't know that we're going to get much more than the third we've gotten for that project.
And at the legislative session, there was a lot of questions about why we needed that $2 million.
However, I do want to point out that, to back up just a second, that solar panel grant, we are going to apply for that from the feds and the state both.
Right, so, yeah, thank you. Okay, so I guess I'll put our thinking caps on moving forward. Counselor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Do the staff have any recommendations other than streets and alleys? Is there anything major that we can foresee coming up in the next year that we should start talking about?
City Hall.
City Hall upgrades?
Hall upgrades. And we talked briefly about the HVAC, putting an HVAC system across the entire building. We only have it in the few offices on the first floor. We don't have any here, of course. As you know, we have the window air conditioners. We do need tuck pointing done. We do need window replacement. There's a lot that we need here. So that might be something to think about.
And I appreciate, that's kind of what I was thinking sitting here. The window behind us is either very cold or very hot, and to be able to create an envelope, I don't believe this building has an envelope, to be very honest, and I think that might be a long-term solution, cost effectiveness, better utilization of our space, especially knowing that our police department's going to be moving out, and then rethinking the entire use of this building and what that looks like moving forward, and how do we, accessibility to this building is terrible. Yes, we have an elevator, but it's a very unwelcoming main entrance for someone who can't navigate the stairs. So I like the idea of looking at City Hall and how do we create a more welcoming, cost-effective space for our citizens in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Johnson. Counselor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd also like to, I don't know if this would get any funding, but you never know. I would like to include our trail system and the proposed project that Bar Engineering had brought forward, although I was not in attendance of that meeting, but I don't know if that could be a part of a legislative priority. But you never know if they would fund trail systems or what have you.
That is a valid request.
So I'd like to see that on there. Thank you.
Thank you. I know that there's a lot of money down there for lakes and trails, lots of money. So, thank you. Okay, we'll add that to the list as well. And if there's any other projects or things that we do as staff, would you, Brett, maybe bring it up to the council for some further action? But we're looking at potential requests for some upgrades for the city hall building, and then some monies that may be allocated for the review of construction, bid documents, whatever it is for the expansion of the trails system that we're proposing in Virginia. So any other items that maybe have an idea, please forward them to Britt, and then we'll go from there. Councilor Friedlieb.
From a recreational standpoint, like reparations and maintenance for the golf course, I understand that there's a lot of like, what are they called? The pathways for the cart pathways
Cart paths,
are washed out. There's sand needed for traps and other things that need to be done to upgrade our facility to make it more accommodating to people that are visiting the area.
And thank you. And I know that there are golf courses that have received bonding money in the past, so that's a valid request as well. Thank you. We'll add that to the list too, please. Okay. So anything else for right now? If you think of anything more, please forward your ideas to Britt. Thank you.
Item number 10 is review and approve the local tax agreement between the Minnesota Department of Revenue and Virginia for the collection of our local sales and use tax. And this is an updated agreement that was just provided to us from the state that they are requiring that we approve.
Okay, thank you. And as a codicil to that, I'm sure this question is going to come up. Where are we on our tax revenue collection for the sales tax? Are we on track?
We are on track, actually over track. We budgeted roughly $125,000 a month, and we have exceeded that since day one.
Thank you. Councilor Paulson?
I was just going to move to approve.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Paulson moves to approve. Is there support? By Councilor Motley. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Would you like to take a quick break? Yeah, let's take 5 minutes, please, and then we'll move to personnel and other items of concern. Thank you. Oh, we're in recess for 5 minutes. Thank you. Okay, let's, okay, let's reconvene now. Britt?
Thank you. We're on item number 11, which is review the letter of understanding for the Evelyn, Virginia Airport Authority Secretary Bookkeeper, and this was referred back from the last council meeting.
I would move approval of the LOU. We did make a concession the last time we talked about that. We removed the phone stipend from that. I don't know what other concessions were anticipated or expected. So I would move that we move forward with the approval of the LOU.
Okay, moved by Counselor Freely, been supported by Counselor Johnson, was it? Further discussion, Counselor Johnson.
I think one of the things that needs clarification that I think has gotten lost here is that the city of Virginia is a co-owner of this facility. Evelyn and Virginia own it. It is a government agency. It's overseen by 2 counselors and a lay leader from each community. And it is our airport. We own half of it. It is not an independent, completely independent thing that we're just contributing to. This is one of those things as a municipality. It's a service that we provide. And before I started on the airport commission, I had no clue what it was for or why it even existed. And now that I've been there for a while, this is an important part of our economic development. It is an important part of our healthcare, having the helicopter base there, and I apologize, I forget what it is. But the practicality of the airport hiring an independent person to help do this would financially undo all of the work that we have worked to accomplish over the last 3 or 4 years. Whoever is in the position there does a ton of work, and it is work that coordinates not just amongst city employees, but amongst Evelyn employees with independent contractors and with aviators from literally all over the world. People are stopping here. And so I'm at a point of frustration because what we're asking for as the airport, and we support this as the airport commission, is to value that position where it is. And again, we are not asking to increase any of the input that has already been allocated from the city of Virginia. It's all part on page, in the 70s, page 73 through 76 details everything that happens and goes on there. And so to provide additional compensation to whomever the person is, and I appreciate that at the last meeting, Councilor Paulson, you said, let's take the person out of this and look at the position. And that's what we have done. And like I said, it truly is something that we need to, for regional economic development, we have to remember there are some of the mining companies and healthcare companies that fly in and out of here regularly. Not to mention that over the years, there's been millions of dollars invested into this facility by the FAA, by MnDOT. All of those things have gotten us to where we are today, which is a very high-quality facility that is being managed very well cooperatively between the city of Virginia and the city of Evelyn. So that's why I'm supportive of this, and I think we need to move forward. That we are, the letter of understanding dates back to January, I think is valid as this request has come, had come in a timely manner. And the initial request, I believe, should be validated, and we should move forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't see anything in our packet with the amended changes. That's why I was wondering what it's it's up for discussion, but there's nothing, the only thing that's in here is what was originally provided, which included the $50 a month stipend and then the effective date of January 1st, 2023. The reason that I voted against this last time was because it completely changed from, at the Personnel Committee meeting, the effective date was April 1st, and there was no $50 a month phone stipend. So I'm not comfortable going back to January when the original was April 1st, and I don't see a new LOU in here with the striking out of the $50 per month.
Okay, thank you. It has been moved and supported to approve the letter of understanding, and part of that motion was the concession of eliminating the phone stipend. So that's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Beyondich.
Thank you. And I guess I'm frustrated with the process as well. The first LOU came through with one date. The second one came through going back to January. The original letter had 15 hours a week. We bill for 30 hours a month. That doesn't quite compute. So until we can get this straightened out and maybe sit down and talk about this and make sure that we are being compensated, there's overtime hours. Does that play into airport hours? Is the city paying that overtime if there are airport hours being used for that? So I just need I need some clarification. I don't like things going back and forth either. So I would like to maybe sit down and go through this financially so I could understand it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moved and supported. Further discussion. Please come to the podium. Amanda, please state your name for the record, and Scott as well, and welcome.
I'm Amanda Metza. I'm the labor rep with AFSCME. And I think it's an interesting perspective to bring forward frustrations with the process at this point, because those are definitely shared by AFSCME. What has happened and the process that has occurred was, first this was brought to personnel. There was an agreement at personnel. It was brought forward, rejected, and it has kind of ping-ponged between committees. At one point, the council authorized staff to discuss and to have further negotiations, and then that became a subject of great ire at the last council meeting, where there was frustration that changes had been made. Now there's frustration that changes haven't been made, and we're not following the normal process of negotiations. There has been no counter proposal made by management, just consistent rejection. And so AFSCME has been essentially negotiating against themselves in order to try to move this forward to the benefit of the Airport Commission. That is our goal. We received a request from an employee who brought it forward directly to management. And we've been trying to facilitate this conversation in moving this process forward so that this can be addressed. Our concern, I hear the financial concerns, those were discussed at the original Personnel Committee, where we did talk about how overtime potentially plays into this. We've talked about how it is paid, through those hours of work. And we analyzed it based on overtime hours last year and overtime hours year-to-date this year. And the determination, Sherry spoke to this at that time, was that there was no negative financial impact on the city here. There's, with the amount on page 73, I think it lists, there is still additional revenue for the city if there were any concerns that came forward from that. But, I think overall, I'm not understanding where we go from here, and we've talked with staff about this. If there are concerns and changes, we're amenable to having that discussion and moving it forward and moving it out of council and getting an agreement. But you're correct that no change happened between the last meeting and this meeting because there was no authorization for any change, and there was no discussion or meeting that took place subsequent to that, nor did the council propose any counter proposal. So because we are being forced to negotiate in a completely foreign environment to negotiations, because the entire council is insisting on having a say in this, this process has been drawn out and has been very lengthy and hasn't been conducive to reaching an agreement, or to hearing changes. Did you have anything that you wanted to add, Scott?
Yes, originally this was brought to our attention through when we have our review committee in January, and that's when at that time it was brought, it wasn't something that we were going to put for the review committee underneath our contract. So that's why it came about in April. And going back on what Councilor Beyondich said, this was changed from our hourly thing to a stipend. So it's not on her hours anymore. So her overtime hours isn't affected by this anymore. So that's not a factor in this. So we've moved past that when we came out with this previous LOU. And why we went back to January to answer Councilor Paulson's question is because this was brought to our attention in January and it's not part of that process. So that's why we came about it in April. And then when at that time at the review committee, it went to the committee and then it gave the city the right to negotiate with the city, and that's what we did. And that's why it went back to January 1st.
But as Scott has said, we heard your concerns about the hourly, we heard your concerns about potential overages. That's why it's reflected as a stipend. We heard the concerns about the phone stipend, though that was in the original letter of understanding that was signed in 2019. But we're agreeable, we'll remove it. We're trying to take away the barriers and to get this passed and to allow this, the person who's doing this work currently to continue doing good work. But every issue that's been brought forward, we have taken it upon ourselves to bring you an amendment and to bring you a change based on your feedback. And every meeting that we come back to, there continues to be more concerns brought forward that in many cases have already been addressed. And so I apologize kind of for the level of frustration around this issue, but this is, we brought this forward in April. It is now June. We have addressed these concerns and they continue to kind of be brought forward in this circular pattern.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Scott. Councilor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. So when we originally had our conversation, we were in full agreement as a personnel committee. And it had nothing to do with the $50 for the phone, and the date was April 1st. So when we left that meeting, that's how I thought it was coming forward to us. So, and I don't know if that doesn't make sense to you? No, it was voted down because it went to January, it went back retro to January 1st of 2023 and added the $50. I would be comfortable voting forward as April 1st retro and remove the $50. That's what was discussed at the personnel
We
committee.
didn't add the $50 though. It was the original letter of understanding. To arrive at the letter of understanding that was in your packet for the last two meetings, we took the 2019 letter of understanding, and I have that because this is the Word document that I printed it from this morning. And I copy and pasted the relevant portions that did not change into a new document. I changed the header, I changed the stipend amount to the $700, reframed it as a stipend, and resent it back to staff. This is, the original letter of understanding had the $50. We didn't discuss it at personnel because we understood it to be non-controversial, right? If you're already paying it, then I wasn't clear that that was a concern moving forward. The date, I'm not clear on the date being an issue, and that was brought forward at the last meeting, but we also had no indication from council that the date was the fundamental problem that needed to be changed.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. So what's in our packet on page 78 is what was before us and before me for the 2019 LOU. And I do not see anything, unless I'm not reading it correctly, that states anything about $50 phone reimbursement. So I'm not sure what you're copying and pasting, but it's on page 78 in our packet. And that was the letter of understanding dated, I'm not sure when it's dated. I suppose Pam could find that original LOU with the date.
We did request that prior to this meeting, correct?
So my question is, I would be willing to move forward and vote yes if the $50 is removed and it reverts to April 1st. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the motion on the floor is to accept the letter of understanding with the $50 stipend removed and the pay reverse back retro pay from January. That's the motion on the floor. Is there, and there was a support for that motion? Is there any further discussion for that motion? First, Sherry, and then over to Counselor Beyond. Sherry?
Okay, before this goes down a rabbit hole, and I'm not trying to throw a monkey wrench into the motion that's on the floor. The $50 stipend that Chris already gets is part of Public Works. She's already getting that. I would like to, if you go on page 77, I'd like to update this invoice to the Evelyn, Virginia Airport Commission to include that $50 stipend. And the only way I can is if I get your permission to do that by part of the LOU. You will also see I want to update the original hourly wage of $23 an hour to include the $250 that she already has, and then whatever, what is it, $175 now? So we're not really fully charging the airport for what she's currently being paid. So but I can't do that. I'm not going to send an invoice. I thought, oh, I'll send it here in April, and then I'm going to hit Jackie again with another, So I was waiting for one complete LOU to send to update the invoice. So that's where my angst is I would like to update this.
Counselor Beyondich?
Thank you, and thank you for that clarification. And I think that's been my frustration, is there's been no increase, and I don't see the benefit. To me, when it's on paper that I work 15 hours a week, and I see the copy of the invoice for 30 hours a month, that doesn't, the math isn't there, and there's been no increases. Our increases have gone up.
But we cannot increase because the LOU hasn't changed. So we have to
Okay,
change the
so
LOU to do
that's
the
what we need
increase.
to change.
Correct.
And that's why I'm saying we need to go back. We need to make it right, and thank you for explaining that.
Okay, thank you. Any other further discussion? Anybody else? Okay.
So Sherry, are you able to, if you are backdate this, are you able to send a corrected invoice to the city of Evelyn or no?
We will, but I don't know, it's split 50/50. The current employee that is doing the work has made it my job easier and Jackie's job easier in that the airport is finally in the black. And the most that I allocate every year is $22,000. And if you do the math on this, we are charging them $93,000, well, do the 8,400 because it's not updated. So less that off the 22, technically, it's pretty reasonable for an airport. Go ask any other city in the St. Louis County, and I know a few, that own an airport, and it's a sink tank. You need that traffic in there, you need that selling of gas, otherwise it's a sink tank. So we're very thankful that we have an airport that's operating in the black.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion?
Could I add?
Yes, Councilor Freely.
So in the black, going back to January, correct?
In the black, going back the last few years now, I'd say about 5 years.
Well,
You've
at the very
changed
least to
management.
January.
Yeah, at least January. And really, I don't want to throw a monkey wrench on your motion out here, but it would be very small to go back to January.
Okay, thank you. And that's a motion on the floor, so.
And the motion on the floor is the current LOU as we see it, excluding the $50 stipend.
And retro to January 1.
Correct.
That's correct. That's the motion on the floor. If adjustments have to be made to the LOU to accommodate that, but the motion on the floor is that motion. So it has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
No.
No.
Okay, roll call, please.
Beyondich. Johnson.
Yes.
Aaron's-Ellie. Yes. Cuffey.
Yes.
Motley.
No.
Friedlieb.
Yes.
Paulson.
No.
Motion fails. 4-3. Thank you. Okay, next item.
Mayor, could I make a motion?
Yes, I'm sorry, Councilor Paulson.
I would like to move the LOU forward, striking out the $50 a month stipend and reverting to an April 1st, 2023 retro date.
Okay, moved by Councilor Paulson to approve an LOU that removes the $50 phone stipend and has the pay stayed the April 1st. The motion on the floor. Is there support for that motion?
Support.
Support by Councilor Motley. Further discussion? Councilor Paulson. Further discussion? Councilor Johnson.
How much are we talking about between January and April? How many dollars? Because, the reason I'm asking this question, because I feel like we have more than spent staff time and money, and we could have just given her that money and been done with it. I'm very frustrated that we're haggling over, I'm guessing it's less than $1,000. I'm guessing it's less than $500 to demonstrate that we value our employees, all of them, and we value the time and work that our administrative staff and the union reps and everybody put in to create something like this. The only reason I would support this moving forward is so we can be done with it and give the staff what they deserve to do their job and be done with this little tiny thing. So if someone knows what that dollar amount is, I'd be happy to hear about what the difference is.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Johnson. Sherry, you have, I see you're going to have your calculator out there.
Yes, if you go to page 73, the new proposed in lieu of what we're currently paying out is $956.40 of revenue for the city over the whole. That's the difference. If we go to the new rate, divide that by monthly, I come up with 79.7. You might as well say $80 a month. And you're talking January, February, March. 3 times 80, that's what it's going to cost.
Okay, thank you. Amanda?
I hear the request for the motion, but I have a process question, which is you have now rejected a letter of understanding, and now you are going to unilaterally attempt to vote to implement a letter of understanding without negotiating. And again, this is my concern with this. If you bring something forward to vote on, then it's an up or down vote, and then there needs to be an authorization to and a proposal can be made, but I don't understand the process that we're engaging in. And this is the fundamental issue with attempting to negotiate with a full council versus authorizing either a committee or staff to negotiate with and to reach tentative agreements. And you can certainly voice your opinion to that committee or to staff to say, this is where we believe that this should go. But I don't believe that it is proper for the council to be taking and voting on a letter of understanding without having first that to me reeks of implementation.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. So it has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Beyondich, and then over to Councilor Motley, and then back to Councilor Paulson. Councilor Beyondich.
Thank you. And I would agree with that. I think it does need to go back to committee, but this was suggested it come back to the committee of the whole. It should have gone back to the committee level. So I agree with that. And that's where it could be talked about and brought forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Motion on the floor. Councilor Motley.
I also agree with Councilor Beyondich. I actually made a comment last think it was last meeting, can we bring this back, can this go back to the Personnel Committee? And I was told no. So, and it's very concerning to me when 2 of the 3 Personnel Committee members have been adamantly against this from me being on the council. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Anything else, Councilor Motley?
Is your recommendation that, and well, I know we have a motion on the floor, but
So
what's your recommendation?
if I may, let's, because this motion is a controversial one, there could be a contractual issue here, and it could be a procedural issue. So I would like to ask our city attorney for some clarification. Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. I think the answer from a procedural standpoint is this. By this motion, what we're doing is we're authorizing a hard offer. It doesn't finalize or conclude anything. Basically, what it does is it sends it back to the union with the power of acceptance. By accepting it, they make it the formal letter of understanding. If they reject it, it would come back to us, and theoretically, we would continue to negotiate. So basically, what the motion does is it sets a hard and fast set of terms that have been authorized and extended back to the union, which would create a power of acceptance.
And if this motion passes, we move forward. If this motion fails, then another motion can be made to send back to committee, correct? All right, thank you. Goes moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Amanda?
I would like the council to think long and hard about that logic that Brian is presenting, because that has impact on how you handle negotiations down the line. I disagree that your personnel committee has been opposed to this. They authorized it, they pushed it out of personnel and made a recommendation by doing so to the committee of the whole and then the council to accept. And then they voted against their own recommendation. And this has been something that has occurred several times over the last year and a half. But what Brian is saying to you is that if there's a controversial subject on the table, the proper thing to do is to vote and make a final offer functionally to the union to accept or deny. The issue here is that your personnel committee is making recommendations, not supporting their own recommendations, and we're going back and forth between committees. And your personnel committee, therefore, does not have the power to make tentative agreements, is what I'm gathering, and not standing by their own tentative agreements. And so I'm not attempting to start controversy with that statement. That is what I have witnessed through this particular process. And I think we need to be careful about that and careful about how we view the process of negotiations and who are your representatives and how you're moving this forward. There is an issue with attempting to negotiate these things in public committees, right? Versus setting up a negotiations, subcommittee and setting dates and working through the process as we always have with staff, right? And it has been a functional process. We have been able to bring tentative agreements that have recommendations and receive, support from the council. But that is not the process that has occurred with this letter of understanding or with many other issues that have come forward recently. And so I take a little bit of issue with the idea that that is the proper process here. On the other hand, we're not interested in necessarily delaying this further. However, we want the process of negotiations to be respected. And so I don't know what you gain by sending it back to personnel. Is the personnel committee going to make a recommendation that then the council, accepts and moving forward? And what is the procedural question? What are the procedural next steps if you do that? What is the procedural next steps if you follow Brian's recommendation and vote in favor of this motion? It's created kind of a conundrum here from the perspective of negotiating in good faith.
Thank you, Amanda. Mr. Lindsay?
Thank you, Mayor. And just to be very, very clear, my comments were not suggesting a method or a strategy or any negotiation tactic moving forward. What I was simply doing was advising the council what the legal effect of the vote would be, nothing more. And so those are my words, and that's my intent.
Yeah, thank you. So it has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Paulson, and then back over to Councilor Beyondich. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I would have fully supported the LOU had the 2 items been changed from April to January and added a $50 per month phone stipend. And when the Personnel Committee adjourned, it was I guess I had Pam clarify, we did make the motion to negotiate. And then it was brought to the council as a whole, not brought back to the committee to actually accept that change in the LOU. So I can't say how I would have voted at that time, but I probably would have said no at that time. I'm not trying to be obstinate about this. I would also agree that the process probably wasn't followed. And what I'm trying to do right now is to go back to the original, what was on the table at the Personnel Committee meeting was April 1st and no $50. And give her all the money that is coming forward, that both cities contribute to the Evelyn, Virginia Airport Authority. So that is my motion going forward. I think Brian took the context of what I was trying to do perfectly well. So I appreciate that. And that's what I'd like to clarify. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor Paulson. Counselor Beyondich.
Thank you. And when we have the committee of the whole meetings, when things come to the committee of the whole, yes, we can approve them or deny them, and we have a week to finalize them. That week gives me time to think things through. It's not an automatic, if I vote this way at a committee of the whole meeting, I'm automatically voting this way at a council meeting. That gives me time to digest what has been said, what we've decided on. So saying that we voted against, you know what, it gave me time to think, which I'm grateful for. And I do believe this needs to come back to the committee level. That doesn't mean it's a hard no. What it means is I need to understand this. I need to go back. I need to make sure that I am looking at the finances and seeing how this works. I want a bigger picture of this. And that's why I want it to go back to the committee so we can look at it and talk about it. To come here and discuss it as a whole is really hard. So that's where I stand. What I vote at committee of the whole may change at a council meeting. It gives me that time to pause and think things through. So I would rather see it come back to a committee level where we can sit around that table again and we can talk and discuss it and come to an agreement on it. That's all I'm asking. It's not being pushed back. That's not what I'm trying to do. I need to understand this. So I would rather see it come to a committee level. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, there's a motion on the floor. Read back the motion, please, Pam, and then we'll vote.
Moved by Counselor Paulson, supported by Counselor Motley to approve the letter of understanding for the Evelyn, Virginia Airport Authority Secretary Bookkeeper excluding the $50 phone stipend and to revert back to April 1st, 2023.
Thank you. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Freely.
So from the details of what we're about to vote on, we're looking to save $250 for somebody that's increased the revenue at the airport by thousands of dollars because of the procedural concerns and the lack of information and the miscommunication. I'm troubled by that. We have the person that's been doing the job exceedingly well. We know what they're doing. We know what the wording is. And we're willing to take away the $250 from that employee despite the fact that they've increased revenue by thousands of dollars. I find that exceedingly troubling. But at the same time, that's where we're at. I personally would have to vote against what we're moving forward on. And if we need to rediscuss it at the Personnel Committee to get it to where it should be, which is retro to January, that's what I'd prefer to do, to be honest with you. Because this would set a precedence in my mind that we're showing disrespect towards employees for the things that they're doing because of procedural miscommunication or concerns that I think we're splitting hairs over repeatedly and cyclically. And I find that troubling. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Freely. Has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Motley.
Could I ever take back my support on the motion?
You surely can if you like.
I would like to,
Can
what's
rescind
the
you-
word in that? Rescind my support for the motion.
Okay, Counselor Motley is asked to rescind her second to the motion on the floor. The motion on the floor still stands by Counselor Paulson. Is there support for that motion by Counselor Paulson? Is there support for that motion by Counselor Paulson? Is there support for that motion by Counselor Paulson? The motion dies for lack of support. Looking for another motion or some more comments? Counselor Beyondich.
Thank you. I would like to make a motion that it comes back to the personnel where we can sit down and talk about this and come to a resolution.
A motion by Counselor Beyondich to move this letter of understanding, this item on the agenda, back to the Personnel Committee for further discussion and review. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Counselor Motley. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, please.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is to review the memorandum of understanding for the AFSCME regarding the Juneteenth holiday. As you may be aware, the state of Minnesota was expected to pass Juneteenth as a holiday in 2024, and in last-minute negotiations with the Senate and the House and Governor, it was changed to 2023. And so, it was changed to a holiday where we can conduct no city business on Juneteenth.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, you see in your packet the memorandum of understanding. Counselor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there clarification on when that holiday falls, if it's on a weekend or what?
AFSCME language already has that. If the holiday's on a Saturday, we get Friday. If it's on Sunday, we get Monday.
But with the state designation of the holiday, is it a date or is it
The date.
the date of June 19th?
Yes.
June 19th, correct. Thank you. Thank you, Counselor Johnson, for that. Okay, looking for action or additional comments regarding the resolution that's in your packet. Or I'm sorry, the memorandum of understanding that is in your packet.
And please note, we did include this in the police and fire contracts, so that's already been addressed in those two agreements.
Sure, in all the bargaining unit contracts, we'll be looking at implementing that.
Police and fire, we just renewed, it was already in their contract upon a state approval as a holiday, which it did now. So then the state police and fire will get it. We are not in contract negotiations with AFSCME yet, so this is the MOU.
Okay, correct. So that's why we have the memorandum of understanding, right? Sure, okay. Looking for action, Counselor Beyondich.
Thank you. Just a question, when do those negotiations start with AFSCME?
When we get notice of intent to negotiate, which usually is until later in this year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Counsel? Anyone?
I will move the memorandum of understanding to the city council meeting for approval.
Okay, Counselor Johnson moves to approve the memorandum of understanding with AFSCME regarding the Juneteenth holiday. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Counselor Freelieb. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I'm sorry, did I miss you, Counselor Beyondich? I apologize. Let's go back. I missed Counselor Beyondich. Please, Counselor Beyondich.
Thank you. I would rather see this be held off until we go into the contract negotiations with AFSCME. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that was her comments, and so I apologize for that, Counselor Beyondich, for not seeing your light on, but it has been moved and supported, so let's vote again. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Roll call, please, Pam.
Johnson?
Yes.
Aaronzelli? Huffy?
Aye.
Motley?
Yes.
Friedlieb?
Aye.
Paulson?
Aye.
Beyondich?
Motion carries 6-1. Thank you.
Item number 13 is the request to approve resolution for hire of a temporary parking monitor.
So moved.
Move to approve by Counselor Johnson. Is there support? Is there support? Is there support? I will step down from the mayor's chair and support that motion to hire the temporary parking monitor. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Motley.
Do we make any money on a parking monitor?
Yes,
We do.
we do.
Okay.
And it's not just the money, or the funds are always great. Compliance is the big issue. When they're trying to street sweep and they're supposed to be on weekly calendar parking and they're not, they can't get down some of these narrow streets like the 500 block 11th Street or 10th Street South because it's so narrow.
Okay.
So if we don't get somebody keeping them in compliance, it,
Okay. Thank you, Britt.
difficult. Yep, thank you.
Hey, Counselor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. Britt, could you just explain temporary, part-time, and then that subject to a 90-shift probation period?
Correct.
Could you just explain that a little bit?
Absolutely. The person that normally holds this part-time parking monitor position is filling in a vacancy for up to a year. And so she's in a different role for up to a year. So this left this spot vacant for a couple months now. And it's that time of year where we really need somebody because of the street sweeping to monitor compliance. So the temporary is because it's not a regular job opening yet. And the part-time is because parking monitor's always been part-time. It's up to 30 hours a week.
Okay, so stating then that when will the employee then be returning at some point that's filling in?
That is the plan, yes.
So, and then this new hire understands that?
Yes, this new hire, the person that we're going to make the offer to, has a current seasonal job at a local campground. And so she was looking for just something to supplement that position. So this is actually perfect for this person's schedule and for our needs and abilities as well.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yes, thank you, Counselor Paulson. So it has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
The next one is a resolution for the hire of single-role EMTs, and on your desk is an updated resolution. We were able to complete another round of interviews yesterday, and we had some really exciting candidates. So we are now looking at hiring 4 single-role EMT positions.
And that brings us up to full staff for the first
Full staff
time.
for single roles for the first time ever.
Very good, thank you.
So move the resolution.
Counselor Johnson moves to approve the resolution to hire the single roles. Is there support? By Counselor Motley. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 13 is approve entry for the 2023 Land of the Loon Parade for the City Council.
So moved.
A move to approve by Counselor Beyondich. Is there support? By Counselor Motley. Further discussion? Counselor Johnson.
Will we be purchasing something to be giving out as we walk?
We could make that as part of the motion.
I would ask that we amend it to make it a non-candy option.
Okay, so there is a motion on the floor to put together, to approve the city council and the mayor's participation in Land of the Parade. It's been moved and supported. There's an amendment that's Counselor Johnson asking that we find something to pass out to the people along the parade route that's of a non-candy prize. So can that be amended by the motion maker?
It can. Is it something that we already have in stock?
It could be.
So we're not having to purchase and spend more
I
money?
might have to. That parade is a very large parade.
Okay.
And you could direct our EDA to pay for it.
Well,
just a thought, but it's.
Right. And to go through, if we have things in stock that we could move
I
along.
got lots of things we'd probably toss out, but yeah.
Yes. We need to keep the cost to a minimum. Thank you.
Okay, so has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor.
Welcome.
I would prefer some sort of candy or like a freeze pop or something, rather than a probably more expensive logoed city item. So I'm sorry, Stephen, or Counselor Johnson, I feel like when kids go to a parade, they expect candy. So maybe the adults want the little trinkets, but I guess I would vote no on that because I really want to have candy to pass out. Thank you.
Okay.
I will remove my condition then.
Okay. The motion for candy has been removed. So now it's been moved and supported to participate in the Land of the Loon Parade. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
Item number 16 is a request to approve a letter of support for the EV Girl Electric Vehicle with CFI Community Program. I think I sent to the council the email, but if the council does put in a letter of support for the IRRB to do this program, we would then have the ability to apply for grants to add electric vehicle charging stations somewhere in the city. I don't know where the location would be yet, but at least we have the option to apply for a grant if we find a spot where we want to put one.
I will move the letter of support.
Councilor Johnson moves to approve the letter of support on the, is there support? By Councilor Beyondich. Is there any further discussion? I know we have a local car dealer who has indicated he'll be approaching the city that they may also donate some of these electric charging stations for the city of Virginia. So hopefully they'll come forward with that. Has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 17 is review the information regarding the rental code fee schedule from the public meeting we had.
Okay. Councilor Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. And to clarify, we've already passed this rental fee schedule, correct? I'm going to be I'm in favor of doing nothing and leaving it alone. It's $250. It's for minimum safety. We need to make sure that our citizens who are not, who own property aren't paying to subsidize what the landlords should be taking care of themselves. And I will go again, repeat what I said on the other night. I truly believe this isn't as much about the annual inspection or annual registration fee as much as it is what those inspections are going to find and what landlords who are not doing their jobs are going to have to redo or relook at to maintain a minimum standard of safety in apartment buildings. I believe the $250 is, it's already a compromise. We've already adjusted it from before. And I think it's time for us to start moving on to start getting the staff in place, start getting the checklists in place, and do all of that stuff so we can publish. We need to publish if this is going to take effect in January. We need to get that published as soon as possible, and we need to start taking steps forward. So I am comfortable with what's presented. The same 5 or 6 landlords are the ones that are coming to the meetings. The other landlords understand and they are accepting of it. And as I said before, the renters are very excited to be able to have some other options when it comes to making sure they're living in safe places. That's my opinion, and I'm not going to make any motion because there's no need to take any further action since we've already done this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Johnson. Councilor Motley, then over to Councilor Paulson. Thank you.
I also support Councilor Johnson, what he just said. I am okay still with the pricing as stands. I guess the only way I would be interested in lowering the rates if we didn't have to hire in order to get the job done to clean these get the rental properties inspected. So I would entertain lowering the price if we didn't have to hire. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Motley. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. So if we go on page 89 in the packet, someone must have transposed my spreadsheets, or spreadsheet. So I guess I'd like to have a conversation about what we're actually thinking in terms of who will be doing the inspections on the, I guess, right-hand bottom corner. It says new staff, 1 staff member, rental inspector, salary with benefits, $100,000, and then we've got equipment costs, $45,000, a vehicle, $40,000 to replace every 5 to 7 years. Estimated costs associated with the rental code are $185,000 annually. And when I look at this, so I guess I'd like to have a conversation, if we could, about what we're thinking of doing, number one, and then number two, if we keep the rates the same and the cost associated is going to be $185,000 a year, but we're taking in a revenue of $326,000 a year, I feel like that's out of alignment, and I feel like it's too much. I would be okay with the city breaking even with some kind of a cushion, but I guess I'd like to discuss, is that what we need, another employee, or our current staff are not licensed to do this?
Our current staff do not have enough capacity to do this. Christina is doing plan reviews, which is very time consuming. Those are what plans look like. So Christina has to go through every single page of that plan review document for the very large one for that building. And that's just one project. So now we have, some years we have up to 10 projects happening. So 10 sheets of those 10 that Christina has to go through with a red pencil and check the code on everything. Very, very time consuming. And then every one of those sheets will have an inspection. So then that would be, now it will be Stephanie. Stephanie posted into the construction codes inspector position. So for every project we have, Stephanie will have to do the inspection. And then for every small project, like a deck, fence, roof, addition, garages, there's inspections, at least one, if not three, depending on what you're doing. So Stephanie's doing those inspections, and Christina will back her up to help her out. Those two are busy with the permits we do already this year. The person that sits at the desk answers the walk-in traffic. So you're constantly bombarded all day long, phone calls, people coming in, I want to build a fence, my neighbor's dog is barking. There's just a lot of calls that you get in one single day. So the staff at this moment is at capacity. So the idea was, back from 2014, was that somebody else would come in to assist with rental inspections. And it was always meant to be when Counselor Cipolla, Little Wolf, and I don't remember who the third person that was on that committee, got together in 2014 to bring this idea forward, they thought it was going to be a self-funded model, that it would make enough revenue to cover all the costs related to this project, that we are working on getting this fixed. This person may end up working themselves out of a job if they're really, really, but we do realize this many locations is going to take a while. So they may not get some of these inspections done until the year 2. It may take time to get this done. But the collection, it's going to be a very large process. So.
And I really appreciate that. So, because I'm just trying to understand what is the best move. And I was just more thinking like, okay, well, what happens? I'm sure there's going to be an inspection overlap annually, and they're never going to get to that many. I think I calculated it's going to take about a 5-year cycle if it's just one person.
Yep.
So I appreciate knowing that. My other question though is, so we've got light part-time, parking part-time. And then this, so if
Light
this.
is actually a full-time position.
Light is a full-time?
Light is a full-time position. However, in winter, that light position often plows. So they're often put into a sidewalk plow. So they're our sidewalk plow person.
Okay, I didn't realize blight was.
It's a full-time
Full-time position. Okay, so that takes that off the table. I was just wondering if we have some of these half-times, if we could combine create a job description that actually would, but I don't know what the capacity is, like what you're saying in terms of inspections, how that's gonna go, or could we
really don't know
coordinate
again
that?
either until we get into this, and so there may be a point where this inspector starts and says, okay, I really need somebody to come with me to do this, and again, we won't know until we.
And then what happens, Britt, if, say that, everything is I guess, done very efficiently, and then that we don't really need that capacity any further, then what happens? Is it a layoff situation?
Yes, the council has to be okay then to redefine the position or remove the position. We always have that authority to determine staffing levels. That is a city, we don't have to do it often, knock on wood, we don't do layoffs often.
Okay.
But we do have the ability to do that, and we have to remember it's by position, not by person. So we may love the person that's in there, but they have layoff protection in the contracts, whatever contract they end in, that will assist them with that. But if it doesn't, this program goes away 5 years from now, we determine it's not feasible, we decide to do something else, we just have to deal with
We
it.
have the option to do that?
We do,
Okay.
and the council just needs to be okay with that.
And then could we discuss the gap of what the estimated costs associated versus what we've already adopted in the fee schedule, that the city would be receiving a $326,000 revenue? Could we talk about that gap and maybe see what the recommendations, I understand where Counselor Johnson and Counselor Motley, but at what point, and maybe this is a question for our city attorney, can the city be a revenue stream like that on fees? Can the city, maybe a little clarification and maybe some discussion regarding, that's if our costs are 185 and where our revenues are 326,000, I'd like to maybe lower that gap.
Mr. Lindsay?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so it's an interesting question because the city is not prohibited necessarily from bringing in more than it expends, but we're not supposed to operate like a for-profit business. The way the law generally talks about it is that the revenue that we bring in is supposed to be reasonably connected to the expense that we intend to incur, and not necessarily, and we see it a lot of times with public utilities. It's not necessarily that it matches up immediately because you can take into consideration additional expenditures, capital expenditures, the increase of cost over time, those sorts of things. But we're not supposed to make huge profits as a city.
Thank you. Councilor Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. And I appreciate where you're coming from, Councilor Paulson. That does seem to be a big thing, but we're also going off of estimates, not knowing how many of that 591 are actual rentals as opposed to legacy family homes or that kind of thing. And this would, I feel like this would also give us an opportunity as we move forward, if we need to adjust, maybe we listen to those, I am a good landlords, and the first year is $250, and then after that, it's $100 if there's no other concerns or anything. So I think there's opportunity for us to adjust as we move forward and get our arms around this beast, but I think it's a good start, and I think that that's why we set it by resolution and not by ordinances, because then we can evaluate it in a year, and we'll have the planning coordinator will have been there for a year, and we'll have all of those things, and maybe there's a need for another assistant to start helping with paperwork and stuff. So now that just bumps up the 185 to almost 250, and then that gap has gotten smaller. So I feel comfortable being aware that there's the opportunity to change this moving forward with this, so that we can get it going by January 1st. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Beyondich.
You. And attending the planning and zoning meeting last night, we did talk about this fee schedule. I wasn't at the meeting, unfortunately, but it also was explained that this can fluctuate. I think that's what Councilor Johnson is saying, that if the costs aren't as high, we can always lower it. It's hard to come from that lower number and all of a sudden tell them, now we're at this. So I was happy to be at the meeting where they could talk about it a little bit and tell me how they arrived at that number, and that year by year, it can be adjusted as it has been done in other communities. So I guess I'm comfortable with that number to see how this rolls out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, ma'am, you've been sitting here for quite a long time. Is this a subject that you'd like to speak to? No? Okay, thank you. Sherry?
I just wanted to clarify, thank you, Mayor and Council, that under this cost associated with the rental code, this is only one staff member. You already have 1, 2, 3 staff members on board in that department. So $326,000 doesn't even cut what last year's budget was for that, just in wages.
That's what I was going to kind of echo Sherry's same sentiment, is that, going forward, especially this first year, we could use this funds that are above and beyond that extra staff person to cover the blight person's wage, or to cover the secretary's wage, or something that we can tie so it doesn't look like we're making all this money, because that secretary is going to have a lot more work coming into with all the flood of these rental applications coming in. I think I've suggested to a lot of people outside of a public meeting, I haven't announced it publicly, but Grand Rapids did have that idea that if you applied within the first 6 months of the enactment, that the $400 application fee was waived, to try to spur people to apply. You may not have your inspection for 18 months to 2 years, depending on where you are on the list, but at least we know who's got rentals in town, and that list has started. And we've gotten that solid list of who is renting, and we have contact information. The 128 7th Street South is a perfect example. They're telling us they don't own it anymore. Who does? They can't tell us that. So
I just have one question, just for clarity purposes. So that $400 fee, is that per unit? So if somebody has 10 units, that's $4,000 a year?
per application.
$4,000 a year for an application. Okay, thank you. Okay, any more discussion? Counselor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I will move that we direct staff to move forward with planning on the list positions and all the other needs, with hopefully being able to publish by July 1st for a January 1st enactment of the rental code.
Counselor Johnson has made a motion to direct staff to research and provide the staffing levels that are needed to accomplish the goals and objectives of the rental code ordinance and the fee schedule. Is there support for that?
Support.
A support by Counselor Motley. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Freely?
That would with the fee schedule as currently listed?
Yes.
I have to take this phone call. It's a legal
Sure.
phone call, but I would be voting no on that. Thank you.
Okay, very good, thank you. So, all right. That's acceptable, right? Okay, so, all right, so the motion is to direct staff to research the needs for staffing at that position in order to accomplish the goals and objectives of the rental code ordinance and the fee schedule. Is there support? Is there support? Well, was there support? Oh, I apologize. I apologize for that. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion now? Councilor Beyondich.
Discussion is, this is not the official document then that's going forward. This is just a motion to research the cost of the staff. So this
correct,
doesn't
correct.
change anything.
Nope, the resolution is staying the same.
Okay.
And then we will start working on our solid cost. Christina had found there actually is this is not a new thing. Rental code is not a new thing, and residential inspector is not a thing. There's actual class that is available online. It takes about a year. So that would be one of the expectations of whatever staff we hire, is that they complete that certification and become the rental code inspector certified. So
And we will talk about that at a later.
we will talk about it at a later personnel meeting.
Thank you.
Yes, we will.
So it has been moved and supported, direct staff to accomplish that. Fee schedule stays the way it is. There's no motion with respect to that. So it has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? One no. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Aaronzelli? Huffy?
Yes.
Motley?
Yes.
Lieb is no. Paulson?
Yes.
Beyondich? Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-1. Thank you. Okay, anything else, Britt?
Thank you. No further items on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Does any other counselor have a item that they want to bring up under other items of concern before we adjourn for the day? Okay, seeing none, thank you, everybody, for all your hard work, and it's been always some tough meetings. So we will stand adjourned to our at 11:44 a.m. Thank you. Have a great day. We stand adjourned.